We're going to start our next section on research features. So Stanford, as Emmanuel mentioned in the morning, Stanford Data Science supports faculty-led research centers on a number of different topics, and we're actually exploring additional ones for starting later this year or this summer. So if you're faculty in the audience and you're interested in an area that crosses boundaries, crosses particularly school disciplinary boundaries, we're open. The ones that we've currently started are on causal science, open science, health, and sustainability. And we'll be hearing from representatives of these four centers. We have a student, we have a staff person, a postdoc, and a faculty director here today. And so they'll each give a little sample of the kinds of work that are done across disciplines in these research centers. And I'll invite up, I think our first speaker is Ambarish. Ambarish, are you here? Yes, great. So Ambarish is a Ram and Vijay Sriram postdoc, data science postdoc fellow here at Stanford Data Science. He's also a member of the Causal Science Center. And I think he and maybe Hito Imbens are in the audience and may either tag team, but if you don't hear enough from them today, all the research centers will be around all day today, so you can find them. All right, Ambarish.
Thank you all for being here. Can you hear me, first of all? Good? Okay. I mean, don't worry, the volume will go up as I speak. So my name is Ambarish. I am a postdoc in Stanford Data Science, and I'm going to give a very brief overview of the Stanford Causal Science Center, or SC squared. It's written SC2, but it's SC squared because Stanford Causal SC, Science Center, another SC, so you have two. Next level thinking, essentially. So what is it all about? What do we deal with? So to address that question, let me not give you an answer, but give you more questions. So here I have a bunch of questions here for you. The first one says, does the new drug increase patient survival rates compared to standard treatment? So it's a very common, very standard question that you see in medical science, right? Let's see the next one. Does an increase in minimum wage reduce employment? It's again a very well-studied, a classic question in economics, especially in labor economics. The next one says, do smaller class sizes improve academic performance? So people working in education, you have dealt with this question a lot of times. The other one says, does long-term exposure to air pollution increase the risk of COVID-19 deaths? So it's a question related to environmental science, environmental policy, also public health. The next one says, does exposure to political advertising on social media influence voting behavior in elections? So it's related to political science. It's also related to behavioral science and also social media analysis. And the last one, does the legalization of recreational marijuana reduce crime rates? So it's related to laws and criminal justice, right? So what's the point? The point is these questions are all real-world relevant questions, and they're very different questions. They're coming from a diverse set of fields. But there is one thing that is common in all these questions. All of them are fundamentally causal questions. They're all talking about the effect caused by an intervention on some outcomes, right? So for example, the first one is talking about the causal effect of the drug on patient survival rate. In the second one, it's talking about the causal effect of increase in minimum wage on employment. In the last one, it's talking about the causal effect of legalizing marijuana on crime rates. So these are all causal questions. Right, and so causality by its very nature, it's a very diverse thing. It's a very interdisciplinary thing. So it makes sense to have an initiative in the university that brings people together working on these different areas and trying to address these different causal questions. And that is exactly what the Stanford Causal Science Center does. Okay? So here we are kind of trying to, we have two main goals here. One is to provide an interdisciplinary community for scholars who are interested in working on causal problems, answering causal questions, which we call causal inference at Stanford. So broadly speaking, in the picture on the left, we, among others, we have people from statistics, from social sciences, from computer science, from biomedical science, and from law. So all of these people are part of this community of the Causal Science Center. And by doing that, you are also encouraging graduate students and postdocs like me to study and apply these causal inference methods in their own domain, right? So the diversity is there in terms of the field of application, but it's not just that. It's not just the field of applications. It's also on the type and aspect of the problem people deal with. So that's referring to the figure on the right. So there are many people who are working on very applied problems, like they are using existing causal methodologies on their own very interesting new applications. There are people on that. There are people who are working on methods problem, like they're creating new methods or new tools to answer relevant questions. And these methods, for different causal questions, the method can be completely different. So for example, if I go back to the questions, in the first case, if I want to learn about the effect of the drug on survival, what would I ideally do? I would try to run an experiment, right? A clinical trial. I would have a sample of people. I'll take some of them, I'll give them the new drug, and the rest of them I'll give them the standard treatment. That's the way I would go. But I cannot do the same thing when it comes to the exposure to air pollution. I cannot run an experiment. I cannot be like, let's take the city, and let's say Palo Alto, and let's increase pollution. Let's keep polluting. I cannot do that. Right? It's unethical. People will beat me up. So here, I cannot do an experiment. I have to rely on observational data. And that sort of incorporates whole new methodologies. All right. So the point is that people are working not only on different fields, but on different types of problems. And there are people who are solely working on theoretical problems. They're developing theories to understand the mechanisms of some real-world phenomena better, or they're also working on theoretical problems to understand some methods, the properties of these methods in a more dense way. Okay, so let me finish up by giving sort of a concrete example of some of the projects that we have been involved in. So let's say you have a patient having a very severe cardiac emergency. So the question is, in that situation, do you route that patient to the nearest hospital, or do you take the patient to a hospital that has the better treating conditions, but that may be farther apart? What do you do? I mean, there is a trade-off here. You can take him to the nearest hospital, but then the treatment may be inferior, or you can take him to the farthest hospital. Treatment may be good, but it will take a long time, and you're fighting against time. How do you do that? The same problem occurs with surgeons. So if you have a patient needing a heart surgery, do you take him to the next surgeon available, or do you wait for a long time for one particularly good surgeon? And if you keep waiting, the patient's condition may get worse. So there is a trade-off. So in this particular work, we are trying to answer these questions, and we are collaborating with people from epidemiology, surgery, healthcare policy, statistics, economics, and computer science. So you can see this is one place where it's really collaborative. People are coming together to answer different aspects of the question. Dr. Joseph Wu and Andrew Grolson, they are all surgeons. They are trying to come up with the substantial question. They are giving the domain knowledge to frame the problem. Myself, Ian, Professor Mike Baiocchi, they are trying to think about the methodologies. And also, all of us are trying to think about implementation and how to interpret these problems. Okay, I'm going to finish up by talking about some of the Stanford activities. How do you meet people? If you want to learn more about this, the center, how do you meet people? One way is to engage in seminars. So we have the online Causal Inference seminar, which happens every Tuesday. There was just one this morning, by the way. There is the Bay Area Tech Economics Seminar, which is a very interesting seminar where people from industries, they come up and they give their own, so they talk about how they use statistical tools and methods for their own problems. Many of them are causal in nature. There is a conference, there is a Stanford Causal Science Conference, which happens every year in November, and this is also a good opportunity to meet people. And finally, there are also courses. You can check the website. And finally, there is a social networking social hour, which is called Causality. You see, it's like causality and then T. It's, again, like next level creativity. So this is a good way. This is actually the best way to meet new people. If you're very loosely interested in causal problems, you can just drop in this social hour and you can meet faculties, students, postdoc working in causal inference problems to learn more. Okay, so that's, I think I should stop now. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, you can stay there, actually. Thank you. So next up, we have Zach Chandler. He's Director of Open Scholarship at the Center for Open and Reproducible Science, and also is part of another project that he'll talk about. Welcome, Zach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Chandler, and it is my pleasure to represent the Center for Open and Reproducible Science, or CORS, today. My faculty director is Russell Poldrak, Associate Director of Maya Mather. And CORS is Stanford's home for open science, and we have a vibrant community of faculty affiliates. And a number of activities. So I'm here today to make a number of offers to you. The first of which is that we have a symposium coming up on the 21st. You'll see that on the Stanford Data Science website, so please feel free to join us there. CORS also awards several open science awards. One for senior researchers called Open Science Champion, one for early career researchers, Open Science Innovator, and 2 new awards this year. One for explicitly open source software, and that's my team. And Stanford Libraries is offering an Open Data Prize. So the context we operate in is changing. I don't know if you've been following changes in federal policy, but data sharing, code sharing, and method sharing is going to be expected to be the norm. I was delighted to see in Laura's slides that she had one for her sharing her data set that had the orchids of the contributors noted. I didn't jump out of my chair and applaud, but I kind of wanted to. And CORS is a place where it's a researcher-led enterprise. So open science can't, if we're going to realize its full potential, we can't be driven by requirements from NIH or NSF. It can't be a checklist. When you put researchers in charge of this problem, you get significantly better outcomes. And that's what we're about. So specifically today, I'm going to talk to you about one of CORS' several activities, and that is that we are the home for Stanford's Open Source Projects Office. You might not know that we had one of those, but I'm here to tell you that we have one, and we're here to engage with you on all things related to research software, particularly open source software, how to go about doing it well. So we are part of CORS. So we necessarily inherit CORS's values structure. So you see there, it's about not just reproducibility, but also transparency, community-mindedness. That's a significant part of the open source ethos. These open source communities have been around for a very long time successfully. So we're here to stitch together Stanford research projects with larger ecosystems of contribution. And then significantly, diversity and inclusion. If we're not doing that on purpose, then we're not really doing open science right, or certainly not open source. So we have 3 primary aims, and to start this, we received funding from the Sloan Foundation. And so I'm writing a progress report due next month. But we are here to catalyze a community, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And we want to grow open source projects and their presence. So most of the research happening here at Stanford has software as part of it. A lot of that software is open source, but these are small projects. Sometimes there's a single coding lead, and we're here to help them figure out how to go about open sourcing their project and doing it really well. And thirdly, open source software communities aren't known for being terribly diverse or inclusive. So we are making it part of our mission to try to do better at that on purpose. The broader context here is that there are 12 now open source projects office in the United States, all of them funded by the Sloan Foundation. So Sloan is doing a little experiment, and we're lucky to be part of that. So we're part of a cohort, that organization that you see there, Curious, in case you want to learn more about them. That's the 12 OSPOs, plus 2 from Ireland, actually, and we're expanding. The University of California is about to show up big here. It started with UC Santa Cruz. UC Berkeley is about to launch one, as are a number of other UCs. So it's an exciting time to be part of this community. So essentially there we get to learn from our peers. You know, we have a community that we're building here at Stanford, but this is our broader network so that we can pick up best practices from others. So our open source programs office has a number of activities. So we are trying to get our hands around the vast array of open source software happening here at Stanford. That is almost impossible, but we're trying. We started out with 25 projects. We thought that was a lot. Now we have a projects registry with 75 plus projects in it, and we know that we have an iceberg phenomenon happening here. We offer consultations for people just getting started. As I mentioned earlier, we award an open source software prize for the first time this year. Please go to our website, find out how you can self-nominate. We would love to hear from you. The one that I'd like to focus on with the 2 minutes that I have left, thank you, is our Maintainers and Contributors Roundtable. So this is the first time we've ever coalesced a group like this here at Stanford. So we meet monthly, and it's the coding leads from labs all across campus. Sometimes this is a postdoc, sometimes this is a grad student, sometimes this is a research software engineer. But usually this person doesn't have a peer necessarily inside their lab. So it's a chance for us to sort of cherry pick all those people, bring them together into a learning community of practice. And this gives you a sense of the places that they come from. It is wildly interdisciplinary, very much like what Emmanuel was talking about with the Stanford Data Science Scholars Program. So we have bioengineering, we have causal inference, automated reasoning, flow physics, the Natural Capital Project for resource economics and the environment, using engineering modeling for turbulence models applied to cardiovascular surgery interventions. It's just an amazing array of people that would normally not be in a room together, all talking about methods that they can share. And it's just been an amazing privilege to be a part of that. And I am out of time. So I can tell you more about this if you find me after. If you go to opensource.stanford.edu, you can learn more about our OSPO. And if you go to cores.stanford.edu, you can learn about those prizes and various things that you can nominate a colleague or yourself for. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Zach. Next, we have a representative from our Center for Data for Health, Shirley Wu. Shirley, come on up, is a PhD student in computer science. She's advised by Yuri Leskovec, who is one of our Stanford Data Sciences founders, actually, back about 4 or 5 years ago, and then also James Zhao, who is the faculty director for the center. So, Shirley?
Glad to be here to present our work. And before we get started, I would like to maybe do a quick review on the events held by on the data science for the health. So in the past 1 year, we have organized events like fun discussions and brainstorming about how data science in general can impact the healthcare system, and also like how aging can impact human society in general. We are also gonna organize more events, and if you have any ideas, feel free to let us know. So let's get started. So today I'm gonna talk about our recent work, which is using language model as agents to reason over the semi-structured medical knowledge. And this is a data science conference. Why don't we start from the angle of data we are using? So in this particular work, we are focusing on two types of data here. The first type is the unstructured data, which refers to the textual information on the Wikipedia pages that are common in the daily life. But there are also abundant amount of structured information. For example, the knowledge graph, where we can construct the entities and the relations between them, and they are connected in this structured way. So to give you a concrete example, this is a biomedicine knowledge graph where there are about 100,000 entities, including disease, protein, molecular function. And moreover, each one of them are connected with other entities, for example, from this observed scientific experiments. For example, the disease could be associated with the protein, or the protein can be interacting with some molecular function. So besides this structured data, we also have textual description about them. So on the left side, this is the description on the functionality of the gene, and the right side are the symptoms of this certain disease. So these two types of data sort of give us a comprehensive view on what's the property of one entity and how they are connected together with other entities. And apparently, let's skip that. And apparently, we human cannot remember all of these large-scale knowledge bases. And it will come down naturally to the application that sometimes we can ask questions, right? Ask questions that sort of touch on this semi-structured knowledge. And one typical way people do nowadays is that if we have a question like search for disease associated with autoimmune, and commonly introduce itches in pregnant women, we can just take this question and throw this question to ChatGPT, and hopefully we get the answer back, which is nice and easy. But if we look at this answer, this is actually wrong. This particular disease returned by this ChatGPT is not common during the pregnancy, and in fact, very few cases are reported to a doctor. So this is sort of showcase how the hallucination of the language model can impact the healthcare system and be misleading and do harm to the downstream applications which involve critical decision making. And instead of ask the language model to generate the answer for us, the high-level view of our work is that we want to query the semi-structured knowledge base in a way that the knowledge itself is grounded, and we sort of find relevant information on this semi-structured knowledge base by ourselves. So to study this question more rigorously, we have just released a benchmark data set last week called STARK, which we essentially built 3 large-scale knowledge bases. And on top of each one of the knowledge base, we have designed this semi-structured query, which features the interplay between the relation information and the textual information that involve the structured and unstructured information in this knowledge base. And we also curated some accurate ground truth answers for each of the questions. And then move to our research problem. Given one query and the semi-structured knowledge base, how do we answer this question? So essentially, we want to build a retrieval system that can take the query and post-process it and retrieve relevant information, which the results will be returned as answer. And recently there have been an emergent direction that people start using this language model a lot to reason for us, to find information for us, and use tools that can solve the problem. And the one aspect that we're looking at this problem is that, in fact, a lot of queries itself are very complex, and most of them sort of relate some context that require the retrieval system to understand the intent of the user. And if we look at language model in a way, it's have the basic understanding of a certain context, and it's able to reason. So essentially, we want to use the language model as agents to use the tools to solve the problem, and moreover, is able to follow the instruction from the environment feedback and generate and execute these actions. And I will give some examples later. But let's think about like how human will solve this retrieval problem. Say, given a question from class, and we are gonna find the answer, do the homework by ourselves. What will we do? There are like basically three hierarchical functions or like process that will involve here. The first process is that we need to access to the information, right? We need to download PDF on the internet, and we need to like read them. And moreover, there are abundant of information out there, and it's impossible for us to read every piece of them. So, we human naturally leverage some tool, for example, Control F to find like certain string that we want, or use some search engine to find the relevant web pages. And lastly, it's also require like certain reasoning. Say if for this question about disease, let's say we get maybe 3 different diseases, and some of them may be right, some of them may be wrong. And how do we know that? And it sort of require our own like common sense reasoning or general knowledge to tell which are wrong, which are correct. So similarly, we have built 3 different tools for the agents, including the tools to access the data, tools to process the textual information so that it can find the information quickly, and also incorporate this word knowledge that can be able to help in its decision-making process. For example, if there's a classifier function, and then maybe this query sort of need to understand whether this disease is infectious disease or uninfectious disease. And this classifier function represents a general understanding of the medical domain, will help in this retrieval process. And then if we look at this paradigm, and the agent itself, if we ask the agent itself to generate the action sequence, it actually not gonna work, because we have found a lot of trivial solutions, which I'm gonna mention later, that the agent actually don't quite know the schema of this knowledge base, or it can have these misleading actions that actually generate the results that are meaningless. So we really need to give the agent some instruction to let the agent know that which directions are right, which directions are correct, so that it can generate more faithful actions. So this is our pipeline in general. So let's say we have a language model agent, and it can generate actions. And what we do is that we will have some queries input to the action so that it can generate the ranking results. And then just like when we are learning things, there should be a teacher to tell us what directions are correct. And here we sort of construct some supervision signal as the feedback to the agent so that in the next step, it can improve the action by itself. And then for the same query as input, it can have a better ranking results at the end. So I'm gonna just briefly show you 2 cases. This is basically the misleading action from the language model agent, and which essentially says that to compute a score for one disease, it will just look into the documents of each disease and see if the question exists or mentioned in the documents. And this will result in a lot of 0 scores, and the results are not really meaningful in any sense. And let's look at the results in our 52 steps, which I'm not gonna go through all this, but just looking at the computational logics, the agent is able to parse the queries into multiple aspects and use the language model classifier and also get related entities from them by exploring the graph structure. And finally, compute the embedding score from between the disease document and the symptom. So I'm gonna wrap up here and show you that our agent retriever can effectively use tools, leverage external feedback, and self-improve itself to conduct retrieval. And finally, 3 takeaways. So basically, we are motivated by the fact that LLM hallucinate a lot, and we are essentially want to reduce the hallucination with grounded knowledge. And this sort of results in the trustworthy decision making, because we are not only getting the results from the language model, we are getting how it makes the actions, how it produces the results in each step. And this sort of also gives us more advanced retrieval with a flexible interface that people can, general public can use. So these are my collaborators, and some collaborators from the Stanford and the Amazon. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Shirley. Thank you so much. So we have a final speaker, David Lobell, who's the faculty director for our Center on Sustainability and Data Science, SUDS. And I think just given the time, David will be the last speaker. We're not going to do a panel. But if I could ask all the speakers to maybe come up front during the break. And so if there's other questions that you have, we'll cover them that way. And we'll make sure everyone gets a snack while you're up here. All right, David, take it away.
Okay, so it's me and then the break. So I'm going to be brief. The Sustainability Data Science Center is fairly new center. We've been maybe a couple years now. And the goal is really to take the very large and growing sustainability community on campus. You saw in Emmanuel's presentation, and you probably already knew, there's a new school of sustainability. And the very large data science and statistics and CS community on campus, and bring them together. And that is a lot harder than it sounds. Obviously, there already is data science going on in sustainability. There already is some work in the data science side on sustainability, but our view is that the potential is really only, is not being reached in any real way. And so we've focused on bringing those communities together in different ways. What I wanted to do today is just show you briefly 4 examples of students' work in this area. Okay, so here's an example of a project which is on the really coming out of the sustainability side in this case. It was a student, in particular a postdoc, Leah, at the end there, who is working in sustainability. In particular, she's interested in the sustainability goals of hunger, and was very interested in what's happening in conflict areas to the crop harvesting and abandonment, which would lead to lack of harvesting. In a lot of areas, we have very difficult time knowing on the ground, and we also still have a difficult time using satellites because these systems are typically very low productivity. And her idea was to use certain features, as shown on the left here, of these harvest piles that are unique features of cultivated areas as opposed to natural landscapes. And so we paired her with some students from computer science and data science to look at this, try to develop image-based techniques to map at scale the existence of cultivated area in each season. And so this was a project that is now in AAAI this coming cycle. Another one is coming more, this is an example of an undergrad student actually coming more from the CS, very excited about LLMs and what their capabilities are, and was interested in what it could be used for from a sustainability perspective. So we suggested just testing the ability of the LLMs to try to map different sustainability outcomes that people would like to track. And this is showing you a list here of common things that we think about on the sustainability side. And what this table is showing is that actually in this case, testing a bunch of different models, GPT 3.5 in this particular study was able to do quite well and quite better than a lot of reference models for a whole range of tasks. And what this looks like basically is, this is just a few examples here of asking the model, basically giving it a lat long, giving it some prompts. We test different prompts and showing that it can actually reproduce things like, for example, infant mortality rate shown here, in addition to some more sort of like objective biophysical tests. Roheen then actually went further than to just look at, say, this works and it's pretty useful. It actually does competitively with other approaches that are out there based on remote sensing. But he was very interested in what kind of biases might show up in using these models. It was sort of well understood that these models being trained on the internet are very biased. And in fact, like the model will tell you that there's variation in things that really shouldn't be varying. And so he then did a systematic analysis of which models were having which biases in which areas. Another example comes out of a class we offered last year where we give ideas for projects to students, and in this case, the students are coming from all over campus. And here are 3 students that took on the task of trying to actually characterize animal farms from satellite imagery. The idea being that animal farms are an important contributor now to many sustainability challenges, especially greenhouse gas emissions, and we often have a difficult time understanding both the size of these facilities, how many animals are going through, and also the practices. All right, and last but not least, there's a lot of, as you maybe get a sense, there's a lot of image-based approaches to these, but typically we're using very sort of fit-for-purpose models, and we'd like to get more towards a foundational approach as the NLP community has. So Samar and Medhani and other students have really been pushing this forward. Summer's work on SAT-MAE, for example, which is, I won't go into the details here, but has been actually picked up by a lot of the large companies like Microsoft, IBM, that are starting to put out image foundation models. So this is really more about building the basic tools that can then be used for downstream applications, and they showed that this approach does well on a lot of downstream tasks relevant for sustainability. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up by just saying, these are 3 takeaways I was asked to put, but there are many ways to get involved if you're interested in sort of exploring this interface. Coming up in a few weeks, we have a mixer for students. You're welcome to also contact me about joining sort of regular lab meetings, at least for a subset of these topics. There's a great spring conference we had recently where lots of students gave some really great talks. And we do offer some both like formal and informal sort of course-based ways to get involved if you're upper level undergrad or even a starting graduate student. And that is break time. Thank you.